Great. Yeah, then I'll go ahead and start, and I'll keep it a bit shorter, not to run over time, since I know it's kind of the final session before dinner. Right, so first of all, thanks for having me. So of course, yeah, kind of David for organizing this conference, this inaugural Future Finance Fest, which is very exciting, in Vilnius University, everyone involved. Right, and today I'll be presenting co-authored work with Daniel Rabetti and De-Rong with the title Is Love Blind? AI-Powered Trading with Emotional Dividends. So first, I'll briefly go over the motivation for this paper and kind of the setting that we investigate. Okay, so the setting that we investigate in this paper is related to private value assets, and in particular, this more emerging class of private value assets, the NFT marketplace. And of course, the unique aspect of NFTs versus other cryptocurrencies is that they are unique and indivisible. Now, you might be most familiar with NFTs in the context of digital art, and they do form the large majority of NFTs out there. However, there's actually a variety of goods that have been used for NFT creation. One of the most highly sought after or high valuation goods is Beeple's artwork Every Day is the First 5,000 Days, comprised of 5,000 separate digital artworks, sold for $69 million. And that is comparable to other fine art, classic cars, kind of other well-known collectible goods. Also, Jack Dorsey, former Twitter CEO's first tweet was created, famously minted into an NFT. We also have things like the cover of a magazine, The Economist, and also researchers from UC Berkeley made some Nobel Prize-winning research into an NFT that alumni of the university later bought for fundraising efforts. So there's a wide variety of NFTs, and a point I'd like to highlight here is that some of these NFTs have achieved very high valuations. And that is kind of some of the motivation for investigating this marketplace. Why are people paying such prices for these digital goods? Okay, and a brief kind of timeline. So in 2009, Bitcoin came into existence. Of course, this is a fintech conference, so many of you are very well familiar with the history. It was not the first cryptocurrency, but the first kind of successful one. Then Vitalik Buterin came in with a more kind of advanced form of the blockchain, Ethereum, in 2013, and shortly thereafter, in 2015, the native cryptocurrency of Ether was born. Now, shortly after this, two software engineers from Google and Microsoft created CryptoPunks, and actually it was sort of an experiment by them at the time, so they did not expect this NFT to take off as it later did, but CryptoPunks have become one of the more actually popular and high valuation collections of NFTs out there. So that was in 2017. They ushered in the concept of NFTs. The ERC 721 standard was proposed in 2018, and that ushered in more diverse collections since then. And of course, kind of the unique aspect of NFTs is that they are unique and indivisible versus fungible tokens such as cryptocurrencies, which have identical properties kind of for any like Bitcoin that anyone owns. Okay, so that brings me to our research question, which is why do individuals purchase these NFTs and pay such exorbitant prices for them? And part of the answer and part of what we investigate can be summarized by a quote from a collectibles expert from Credit Suisse. And he says, for the private value asset market in general, and I'll quickly read this quote, that hardly any of the clients regard their collectibles as pure investments. There is more to it than that. Some also want to create a positive impact, but more often regard collectibles as something that they feel proud about. Collectibles symbolize their passion and interests. And this is where we draw the inspiration for emotional dividends in the NFT marketplace from. So it's unlikely that all of these traders are trading purely for financial gain or seeing NFTs as a store of value, as a very stable asset. We've seen standard deviation volatility of NFT returns is quite high. So there must be some emotional dividend component, and in this paper we try to quantify that component and see what are the determinants of this component. And kind of a personal story from when I was little, I remember my parents introducing me to modern art, and in particular the Black Square by Kazimir Malevich. And while it's sold for millions of dollars, it's a very high value painting, but I remember thinking at the time, it's a black square. I can draw a black square. You can draw a black square. Anyone can draw a black square, and yet his black square is worth millions of dollars, mine is worthless. Why is that? And I think that really kind of goes over to the NFT marketplace as well. So there is one kind of authenticated version of the NFT that someone can own, and it does make it special and elicit a high valuation, at least for particular NFTs. Okay, so we try to understand the price formation process of NFTs. So first we look at the determinants that drive NFT prices. Then we create a proxy for the emotional dividend components of NFT prices. And in general, there are two major components to pricing an NFT: the financial gain or expected financial gain aspect and the emotional utility aspect. By the way, emotional utility of NFTs, so you can think about in-person networking events that they would allow you to. You can think about closeness to influencers, celebrities who have purchased that NFT. You can think about kind of status symbols, digital status symbols, rather than showing off a painting in a living room. There's a lot more digital presence now, so someone can show off an NFT as an avatar. And finally, NFTs also actually allow occasionally users to share in creator fee royalty fees as well. So there is that kind of aspect too. Okay, and once we create this proxy for emotional dividends, we also investigate how well AI algorithms perform in trading NFTs. And we find that for NFTs with a high degree of emotional utility, where the component of emotional dividends is high, the algorithms perform less well. And also traders who trade NFTs with a high emotional dividend component tend to underperform those who trade NFTs with a lower emotional dividend component. And hence, that's kind of like where the title comes from, Love is Blind. So they still trade these NFTs. In terms of related literature, our paper is related to the private value assets literature. So this will be the pricing of fine art, British stamps, vintage wine, classic cars, and other collectibles. And also the literatures on cryptocurrencies and NFTs, as well as finance and AI. Okay, so what do we find? So first of all, we construct our proxy of emotional dividends using a hedonic regression model, and I'll go over it in a bit more detail, but essentially it will be the residual of the hedonic pricing model. And we find that approximately 15% of variation in NFT prices can be attributed to this emotional dividend component. So it's not exorbitantly large, but still sizable. And then we look at the determinants of emotional dividends. And we find a number of determinants, including, for instance, the past maximum price of the collection. And that can serve as an anchoring effect for this NFT. Also, NFT age and rarity, so kind of the historical significance, if you will, of the NFT. And finally, also broad interest in the NFT community and marketplace. And this can refer to kind of like a social good aspect of NFT valuation. That's kind of also supported by other related literature on NFTs, that there's a big social aspect of trading in this community. And a final determinant would be ETH returns, and that would coincide with a wealth effect. So as wealth in the community increases, kind of in the crypto NFT community increases, then valuations of NFTs also increase. And this is also in line or in line with the literature on other private value assets, so not NFTs. So a wealth effect has been shown to correlate with returns of these assets as well. And finally, as I mentioned, we find that AI algorithms perform less well for NFTs with a high emotional dividend component, and also traders individually also perform less well when the NFTs they're trading have a high emotional value. Okay, so moving on to the data set that we use. In the paper, we focus on 10 main NFT collections. So I already mentioned CryptoPunks. There's also Bored Ape Yacht Club, so that's the other kind of relatively really famous NFT collection. World of Women, which was created by a woman creator, so that's kind of a rare special in this space, and a number of others. The valuation of the NFT marketplace was around 40 billion in 2021. Now, kind of the spike of NFT valuations was around 2021, 2022. It has declined since then, but it still remains higher than, for instance, 2020 levels. And actually, I was checking kind of like sales in the NFT marketplace earlier today, and I was kind of surprised to see actually like this July and August also rebounding volumes. And of course, this is also dependent on kind of the administration and regulations and so forth. So it can be cyclical, not just in NFTs or cryptocurrencies, but in other collectible markets as well. And finally, in terms of transactions, our sample covers over 200,000 transactions for over 85,000 tokens. And yeah, on the right, you can see kind of some of the largest sales for the CryptoPunks collection. So these digital artworks were sold for, in this case, I suppose like tens of millions of dollars. The sample covers daily observations from June 1st, 2017 to December 31st, 2023. NFT transactions come from Etherscan. We also source NFT attributes from OpenSea. So this would be kind of hundreds of attributes for each of the different NFT collections. Rarity scores come from Rarity tools. We also have data on unique wallets and buyer and seller characteristics. And this is kind of an advantage of the NFT setting in the sense that for a lot of the kind of private value assets, a lot of those are traded in closed door auctions. We don't have much information, sometimes any information on the identities of the sellers and buyers. It is slightly more transparent here in the sense that at least we have some sense of the experience that these buyers and sellers have in the market prior to the transaction. We rely on Google Search Volume Index for Google Trend data on search term for non-fungible token and a number of similar related terms. And finally, ETH prices come from CoinGecko, and this will be used when we analyze this wealth effect of investors. Here are some summary statistics for these 10 collections. I mentioned there is a creator fee for many of these collections. And essentially, even after the NFTs are minted, the creators do receive a percentage of the proceeds from each subsequent transaction. And some attributes of certain NFTs in the collections also allow the buyers to participate in the royalty fee. So there's actually kind of a monetary gain for certain attributes of NFTs as well. And of course, they are limited in supply. So here, kind of mode would be around 10,000, but that does increase the rarity of these NFTs. Okay, so moving on to the methodology for creating this emotional dividend proxy. As I mentioned, price can be decomposed into the financial and non-financial components. In particular, price of an NFT would be equal to the present value of the resale proceeds, so kind of optimal time to resell less current price paid, discounted to the present, plus the present value of all of the emotional dividends received from owning the NFT for that time. Okay, and it's a bit hard, of course, to predict the exact perfect time for reselling an NFT. And what we do in this case is that we assume that the NFT can be resold for its currently for its fair price as determined by a hedonic regression model, which is commonly used for valuing private value assets. So this model works as follows. Essentially, we regress the log price of the NFT on a number of kind of collection features. So these would be the hundreds of attributes for the particular NFT, as well as broad kind of Bored Ape Yacht Club or other collection attributes. And we include months, year dummies as well. And typically, this regression would be used with a focus on the coefficients on the month, year dummies. And this would be used to create a hedonic price index for the valuation of that asset class. But in this case, we focus on the residuals between the actual price paid and the predicted price according to this model. And essentially, this residual we would term the emotional dividend, kind of unpriced component that an individual is maybe overpaying or underpaying for the NFT. Okay, so first of all, what do we find with regards to the pricing of NFTs? Well, I mentioned that we do find an anchoring effect. So essentially, the higher the previous maximum price that the NFT was sold, the higher the expected price that will be paid. In addition, liquidity plays a role. So that would be kind of the transaction record variable. So that would be the number of transactions for this collection prior to the current transaction date. And finally, also NFT age. So of course, it's a very emerging asset class, but nevertheless, kind of the longer the collection has existed, the higher on average the price that it generates. And here also you can see, so all the regressions also in addition to these collection features include the attribute dummy variables. Yeah.
So why not the dummies as well be part of the emotional dividend, or that's a social dividend, the year-month dummies?
Sure, yes. So first of all, yes, so the dummies, so those would be kind of hundreds of characteristics, lots of characteristics. They could be potentially pricing relevant. So in these regressions, essentially this would be the log price on all of the collection, like NFT collection, possibly pricing relevant attributes. So in this regression, we definitely want to include them because some attributes are more rare, and generally, like the more rare NFTs would be priced higher. Some attributes give you access to those royalty fees, so of course that should be priced higher.
No, so the year-month dummy is not something that is relevant in a hedonic regression. That is some sort of an unexpected social component of the pricing, right? So I would potentially add it as an emotional / social unexplained dividend as well.
You mean like for the year months dummies?
Exactly, yeah. That's a cultural measure of unexplained average about too high prices on a given year month.
Sure, yes. I suppose it is, yes. I suppose like they are priced, so they would be like part of the price for the NFT. So they would matter for the evaluation. So I suppose if someone only had like financial considerations, that they would still,
right.
Yeah.
But January 2024 is not something that gives me pleasure to be priced in an NFT. It's just an unexplained variation of the other thing.
Yeah. And here the regressions are for the price of the NFT, so not the emotional dividend component yet. Yeah, but yeah, I agree, yeah, pricing relevant, definitely. Okay, and yeah, so kind of to summarize these effects, so that would be the anchoring effect, historical significance, quote unquote, for the nascent NFT market effect, and a liquidity effect. However, around 15% of price variation we find to be attributed to these emotional dividends.
How do you distinguish between emotional and economic components? For example, rarity, is it emotional or economic?
Yeah, so
age, they can be both.
Sure, yes. So essentially, kind of in this like first stage of the analysis, we try to distinguish everything that is priced from kind of like the non-price component. So the financial gain, like expected financial gain component. However, in the second part, we look at what determines this emotional dividends. And we do consider, again, kind of like the interaction. First of all, we consider investor characteristics, so the experience of the investors, but then also the interactions between investor experience and attribute dummies and rarity and so forth, because different people can value these differently. Yeah. All right, and yeah, so I'll probably wrap up this emotional dividend part. So we do 2 validation tests for emotional dividends. The first is based on celebrity endorsements, and the second is based on Google search index attention. And the rationale for the first validation test goes as follows. When a celebrity purchases a particular NFT, many people in the community can see that as public endorsement of the NFT. Of course, celebrities have many fans. Fans want to feel closer to the celebrities. Purchasing an NFT in the same collection can help them do so. And second, the Google search index for NFT-related terms, we would also expect to coincide with higher emotional utility derived from NFT ownership, because it brings attention to the NFT community. It gives a bit more credibility for NFT owners. It gives more people to recognize NFTs as a status symbol, which a lot of NFT owners would like people to associate with their NFT ownership. So that should also result in higher emotional utility. And this is one of the many examples of Justin Bieber, Stephen Curry, who purchased a Bored Ape, and that coincided with increased popularity. So we look at emotional dividends before and after celebrity endorsements and find that they do tend to increase. And when we test this more formally, we also find that emotional dividends are higher following a celebrity endorsement. So here an endorsement would be an NFT that was purchased in the 10 days following a celebrity endorsement. So the 0 would be all other transactions. And we see a significant rise in emotional dividends after a celebrity endorsement. So this is sort of a validation test for the emotional dividend proxy. And similarly, when we look at Google search index trends and emotional dividends, so here they would be volume weighted by collection, and also we would use kind of the actual price less the predicted price rather than log prices for this chart. What we see is also kind of a coincident effect of more attention to NFTs and higher emotional dividends. Okay, so I think I'm running out of time, and I don't want to be late, but essentially this would be kind of the most important part of the paper, because everything else hinges on this definition of emotional dividends. After this, we look at the possible determinants of emotional dividends. So as I mentioned, investor characteristics are very special and key here. That wouldn't be available in other private value assets. We look at the interactions between all of these. And in general, we find that more experienced buyers tend to trade lower emotional dividend NFTs, kind of avoid overpaying for them. More experienced sellers are able to take more, sell NFTs with a higher emotional dividend component. Then we do, deep learning trading. This is kind of what I mentioned at the beginning. The features that we find most important in explaining emotional dividends are related to the wealth effect, a social good effect, and some sort of anchoring and historical significance. So for our AI trading, we use ResNet, so an image similarity model, essentially kind of extracting the features of a predefined set of high-value NFTs, so the top 1% by sales price, predicted price, or emotional dividends, and essentially test the transactions in the next 3 months based on how similar they are to that top 1%, the model performs similarly to, as you would expect, kind of a human, so kind of same collection NFTs, but with different attributes, receive lower similarity scores. And what we find is that the predictions are relatively good when we sort based on sales price or predicted price, but not when we look at the top 1% by emotional dividends. And yeah, so in conclusion, main part of this paper proposes the emotional dividend measure for NFT trading. We offer some novel insights on the determinants of emotional dividends, such as the wealth effect, social good effect, historical significance that I mentioned. And we show that while AI models do a good job of trading based on NFT prices, that kind of performance disappears when they try to trade based on the emotional dividend component. And with that, thank you very much for your attention. And I think, yeah, I'm just 1 minute over. Yeah.
I'll take advantage of that minute. So with regards to prices, for instance, some people love NFTs, some don't. If there's a bubble, how would that incorporate into your price equation?
That would be the time fixed effects.
Yes, I suppose a large part of that, yeah, would be, yeah. Yeah, I guess it also depends, yeah, on the length of the bubble. So yeah, if it's kind of like a couple days, maybe it won't be captured by the month year dummy, but yes.
And then with regards to your emotional dividend, which was the primary focus of the study, I guess, how applicable is it to other markets or scenarios outside of NFTs?
Sure. Yeah. So I think in general, like methodology is applicable. I think one of the limitations for other private value asset classes is this lack of kind of transparency regarding a lot of the auction house sales. So I think that's a benefit of the NFT setting, that we are able to gain this information and kind of, yeah, currently and going forward as well. So at least some investor characteristics. Yeah, and kind of, yeah, all of the transactions. Yeah.
I think to help with the motivation, you need, in an ideal case, some sort of a tension that cannot be resolved in the wine market. So there's they measure viewposts, religious groups in the wine market. Some people say prices should be formed this way. Some other people say price should be formed this other way. They can't resolve that political difference, and then you say, actually I can, because now I have a similar market that has a lot more transparency in it. So if you can find this tension that has been existing for decades in the other private, because right now it's very kind of like a phenomenology, like you're giving phenomena, but they're not resolving a dispute.
So,
that already exists.
So it would be nice to have, yeah, some implication, like more far-reaching implications for, yeah, all of these other private value assets. Yeah. Yeah, good idea.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you.